Another launch, another F in the chat, huh? Alright, so let me start off this video by saying this is what you need to know about the new RTX 3080 Ti. It's meant to be almost as fast as the RTX 3090 in gaming, but it's only as fast as the RTX 3070 in mining. Okay, it costs a cool $11.99, and yeah, we all know this is going to be marked up like crazy, yet because of that mining limitation, it might make its way into the hands of a few more gamers. And look, everyone here at Hardware Canucks asked the same questions you are when NVIDIA started to talk to us about this GPU. Why are they releasing it now instead of trying to improve the stock of the situation of existing cards that even we can't buy? And then, why doing this in the middle of a shortage anyways? Now, the problem here is that NVIDIA is basically diverting cores that could have been used to make the RTX 3080 stock situation a little bit better, but instead using them to produce an even higher priced card. Meanwhile, there's still people waiting for their RTX 3080s, making this purely a business move from NVIDIA and nothing more. Because let's be honest, the last 6 months since the RTX 3080 launch has been a total show. Limited supply, super high demand, tariffs, scalpers, and even plenty of greed from retailers and board partners. It isn't even a cool meme anymore, and rather something that's become a lot more serious that could have lasting effects on the whole PC gaming space. And to be frank, I hate it. It's easy to make fun of the stock situation and call this launch NVIDIA greed or laugh, while every GPU is sold in seconds. But on the flip side, this might be the first time we're seeing a company at least take some steps to discourage large-scale mining. That means the RTX 3080 Ti will be the first card to include a hardware-based hash rate limiter. Not only that, but other than the cores going into the RTX 3090, every new GeForce GPU coming off the assembly line will have the same cut down hash rates. So is this finally going to give some new sense of hope to gamers? Well, maybe. But maybe not. Show off the cool build and not the cables with the new Corsair 5000 series. Welcome the all-new interior you'll appreciate for whatever build you desire without any hassle of cable management and appropriate cooling all around with proper dust filtration on all 3 models. Check it out below. Alright, so let's start right off with the elephant in the room, and that's is mining. First of all, any new RTX 3080, 3070, 3060 Ti, and the 3060 cores will have that built-in hardware limiter that's supposed to cut the hash rates in about half. And no, this isn't a joke piece of software, but a true hardware-based solution. That will be labeled as LHR on the packaging for light hash rate, since until stock of the new original cards sell through, both will be around at the same time. The Ti cards will natively have this cut down from day one, so they won't have the LHR name. And the RTX 3090 will keep being sold as is without the LHR version. So right about now, you're probably wondering if this will drive up the demand and prices of these older GPUs even more, and the answer is absolutely yes, at least in the short term until LHR cards become more widely available. So what does that mean for the RTX 3080 Ti? Well, like I said in the intro, it might cost a ton of money, but at stock settings, it has only a bit higher Ethereum hash rate than an RTX 3070, while chugging down a heck of a lot more power. I should also mention our crew in Montreal was able to lower the Ti to 58% power, or about 205 watts, and not lose any mining performance, so take that for what it is. But Ethereum and Dagger Hashimoto algorithms are not the only games in town for GPU mining. It's just the most profitable right now, and is the only one being targeted by this limiter right now. There are smaller algorithms like Octopus, where the RTX 3080 Ti still packs a full hash rate punch. Basically, NVIDIA is not cutting off mining altogether, and that's good news for hobbyists who use their GPUs to make some extra cash in their downtime, since those other algorithms are available through platforms like NiceHash. So by targeting Ethereum exclusively, NVIDIA's intent is to make those GPUs a lot less desirable for the mining companies and professional miners who buy truckloads of those things. I wouldn't put past them to somehow find a workaround it though, like they did with a software limiter. But honestly, will that do a darn thing about availability? Absolutely no, at least not right away. First of all, we're living in a world where miners are paying way over $1,000 for the RTX or the RX 5700 XT that mine around the RTX 3070 levels, which really makes the RTX 3080 Ti's price point at $1199 the perfect GPU for markups. Whew. Through the roof. And even if some magical land massive mining corporations don't want them, there's just so much pent-up demand for gamers still waiting for their chance to update, then these RTX 3080 Ti's are going to be grabbed up in no time. Anyways, let's get onto the gaming track. In the normal market, NVIDIA would have had to respond a lot sooner to the RX 6900 XT by either lowering the RTX 3090 price or launching the RTX 3080 Ti earlier. But they didn't, mostly because they were able to sell every single one of those cards, and AMD's been pretty much unable to produce more than a handful of those cards anyway. In terms of specs, you basically get 95% of the way to an RTX 3090, except with half the memory, but like Eber and Mike saw in past videos, 12 gigabytes is more than enough for literally every gaming situation, and yes, even in 8K. There are cuts to both core and memory frequencies, along with the number of CUDA cores and texture units, all of which points towards NVIDIA using the GA102 cores that didn't make the cut for the RTX 3090. But while the 3090 is still technically the king of the hill due to things like internal clock timings and variations between cores, the Ti could still come out on top every now and then. The bigger comparison, however, will probably be against the RTX 3080, and in that respect, there's a pretty massive spec bump for the Ti. And yes, even with its price. But what the RTX 3080 Ti Founders Edition carries forward from its smaller brother is the overall design of the card. It has the same dual slot layout and uses a unique push-pull design that NVIDIA first showed off 6 months ago. I mean, it looks great, fits into most cases, and gets almost as good temperatures as the much bigger designs. And yes, I'm looking at you, Gigabyte, with your massive, almost 4-slot graphics card. It also uses the same 12-pin power connector as the other FE cards, which exits in the world's worst position, but I guess they couldn't be avoided since that's where the PCB ends anyway. The only real change you can see from the outside is a subtle polished metal edge around the fans, where the original RTX 3080 uses a matte finish. Meanwhile, the rear has all the basics, including HDMI 2.1 and 3 DisplayPort 1.4 ports. Unfortunately, no USB-C here. And this is also where there's another small change. Instead of the gunmetal gray on the 3080, the Ti has a chrome finish. Now, before I get into the actual benchmark results, it's important to understand how the RTX 3080 Ti lines up with other NVIDIA GPUs from a temperatures, noise, and power consumption standpoint. Even though the Ti uses the same cooler as the much more efficient RTX 3080, temperatures were pretty well behaved throughout testing. As a matter of fact, they never got anywhere near to NVIDIA's maximum, so that's really good news. Those temperatures did not come with too much of an increase in noise either, since the Ti stayed pretty well behaved. It wasn't the quietest of the cards here, but it was barely audible over our system fans. Power consumption, on the other hand, is right in line with the RTX 3090, and our sample at least actually peaked a little bit higher. I think the most interesting thing here is how the RTX 3080 Ti compares with the RX 6900 XT, and that is it actually sucks down a lot more power, so AMD does hold a slight edge in overall efficiency. Now, with specs like these, performance at 1440p is pretty much tied with the RTX 3090 and 12 to 20% faster than the RTX 3080, provided a game is not CPU bottlenecked. And yes, these cards are so fast, it's pretty easy to get them into a CPU limited territory, even at 1440p. But even though this looks really impressive, finding any of these cards at NVIDIA's mythical suggested retail price point will probably be impossible. It's a lot extra to pay for that kind of uplift. I mean, sure, against the completely overpriced RTX 3090, it looks like an okay value, but the 3080 or even the 6800 XT are really well positioned, even if they're at the bottom of these charts. And let's not forget the RX 6900 XT, which is even harder to find than any of these GeForce cards, but it still competes pretty well considering it's supposed to cost $1,000. Moving on to 4K, and it's pretty much the same story as with 1440p, since positioning of these high-end GPUs is rarely, if ever, changes when it comes to crazy high resolutions. Frame rates take a plunge, but you can see how the RTX 3090's double memory size does absolutely nothing. So again, it's overall just 2 to 4% faster than the RTX 3080 Ti. And against the RX 6900 XT, I've got to hand it to AMD, since they've designed a really competitive GPU. Again, if you find one. GG. Moving on to ray tracing, when it comes to NVIDIA versus their own cards, basically follow the last few benchmarks. The RTX 3080 Ti matches or is just under the RTX 3090's performance, while the AMD cards fall a bit behind. But the interesting thing here is that with the last few drivers, The RX 6900 XT and the 6800 XT have become a bit more competitive. It'll be more interesting to see how this plays out in the next few months as both teams launch more games that support ray tracing. Now, what about programs that impact the workflow of creators? And both NVIDIA and AMD claim their GPUs speed up this workflow, but by how much? Well, this is a new area for us, but it touches on a lot of the applications that we use on a daily basis. So starting with Blender Cycles rendering, and this is one area where NVIDIA clearly has the lead, but let's be honest for a second. Even though they claim the RTX 3090 is built for creators, in this situation, it actually isn't, since the much cheaper 3080 Ti gets identical results. Moving on to Premiere, and this is something really interesting. No matter how many times we ran our custom output test, the RTX 3080 Ti kept leading by a pretty wide margin again and again and again and again. There's no real way to explain this other than to say that these are the results that we got, and that's it. On the other hand, AMD's been working very closely with the Blackmagic team on optimizing Resolve for new Radeon cards, and it's starting to show. At least from a rendering perspective, the RX 6900 XT and the 6800 XT just walk all over everything NVIDIA has got right now, even with studio drivers. That's pretty impressive. Well done, AMD. And so I guess that wraps things up. In the end, if this was a normal year with the usual rollouts of graphics cards, the RTX 3080 Ti would be a pretty good addition to NVIDIA's lineup, right? It performs well, and it almost matches the super expensive RTX 3090 in most games. But I also have to wonder if NVIDIA's strategy here was to release a card like the RTX 3090, which is so stupidly overpriced that it makes everything underneath and even expensive cards like the 3080 Ti look like a better deal. Anyway, the real question here is whether or not NVIDIA's mining limiters will make any difference. They're sure making a big deal about it, aren't they? Like that's all they're talking about. And the answer to this would be a bit more complicated. In the short term, the answer is no, because demand from even regular gamers is so high that every damn GPU will sell no matter what. In the long run, however, no. Honestly, NVIDIA is looking out for themselves before anyone else, like AMD and Intel. They're a company living at the will of their shareholders, and that means ultimately making money. So introducing cards with capped hash rates for the gaming market while pushing miners to the more expensive options is a win-win situation for NVIDIA. In the end, hopefully this leads to better availability. I mean, we always say that, for less scalping and better prices for everyone, and at least some hope for improvement. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. I really don't care how they swing the story. This isn't about helping gamers, because the 3080 Ti still costs $1,200 and above, and that feels like a money grab before anything else. I can see it now. Retailers asking the RTX 3080 buyers if they want to cancel their orders in order to buy a higher end price card. I'm sure this is going to be happening everywhere. Really, I'm thinking by the time the dust settles, this might be just another expensive GPU you cannot buy, and that would piss us all off even more. But let me know what you think of the new Ti launch. Press F in the chat. I'm Dmitry, thanks so much for watching. Check out this other relevant content. Subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next video.